You and I say, you know, we always have, we understand. You know, and, you know, so I just want to share that. I hadn't heard the first time. We don't take it. She didn't give me the name, but she said you were gonna
You guys ready?
Yep.
Ready? What do you want to talk about first?
Well, first, you may have caught this when you were looking at our proposal, but on our Article 3 that we passed out, there's actually another piece to it. There was a section 3.8. We talked about bringing language like this last time, but you know, given that there's a few places that just for convenience sake, we may want to make reference to board rule or something like that. The question is, we talked about a little bit, what does that mean? Does that mean the contract can be changed by changing it? Does it not mean that? So we're just trying to basically apply a sort of default setting. And our default setting is that those references to those kinds of documents are, well, those documents are incorporated by reference in whatever form they existed when the agreement's ratified. There's also a conversation amongst ourselves. Faculty feel that there would be value in having all of those documents that are referred to in, you know, in the back of the contract, just so people don't have to go looking in, you know, all sorts of different places to find what they need to know. And then finally, you know, with the understanding that you may want to change something, at least how it relates to other employees, and not necessarily need to worry about bargaining it with us. You know, that's fine. If you want to change one of these policies or IMMs, it's just not going to affect us until it's bargained, which, you know, would be the case anyway. But we didn't want you to feel like we were trying to take away your ability to change terms and conditions of employment for non-bargaining unit members. So you're totally free to do that. But anything that would affect us would need to be bargained first. So maybe you noticed that, maybe you didn't, but that is there. So I just wanted to put it on the record.
Appreciate that. I actually didn't notice it.
We do have some responses, as you may have noticed if you looked at the whiteboard. On, so we'll go to the ones that were easy, or the ones that we expected to most likely to get TAs on today. 4.1 and 4.5 we were good with. 4.3 we were good with last time, but we still needed to TA that today. We have one question about 4.4, and if the answer is yes, then I think we have a TA. We just want to make sure. So in section B, one of the things that we're trying to accomplish in our proposal on this section, one of the things we would like to do is essentially when, there's something like all college day going on and there's, sort of general sessions and then breakout sessions, we'd like to have a breakout session or a room to run kind of concurrently with those breakout sessions that faculty could attend if they wanted to, if there's nothing else required that they have to go to. So I read your last sentence as permitting that, but there was some question amongst our team as to whether my reading was your intent or not. But where it says, provided that the union's meeting shall not be deemed to be part of the college's agenda for the meeting or event or in conflict with required meeting and professional development. So I took that to mean that as long as the union meeting that's going on isn't pulling faculty away from required meetings or isn't being used as an excuse to not go to required meetings, that everything would be okay from your end. So if that's the case, there's no resistance to us kind of having a parallel breakout session when faculty aren't required to be elsewhere, then I think we're good with this. But I just wanted to make sure that was understood.
Greg, the question about that, I think the problem might be in the term parallel. So if the college is having a faculty meeting, faculty day, and we have a series of workshops for the faculty, then that means that the faculty should go into those workshops. So if we have session A or session B and they're concurrent workshops, then the faculty has a choice to go to section A and section B because it's college related, academic related, etc. So are you saying that you would want to have an opportunity for faculty to elect not to go to session A or B, but to go to a union meeting at the same time?
I think that's what I think that's.
Well, I think like on All College Day, one of the ones they typically have is walk around and see the turtles and things.
Right.
Could you choose to go to a meeting of the union rather than go walk to the turtles? I think is our point. Because you pick from one of 8 different sessions you can go to in the afternoon.
Yeah, we'll need some time to discuss that. Because we see your point. You're saying instead of going to do the turtle tour.
And there's nothing wrong with going to see the turtles.
Yeah, and I'm sure, Caitlin, we would want people to enjoy our turtles.
Yeah.
But we understand that and so forth. The issue is about what type of meeting. Like, for instance, clearly, if it's a fall faculty meeting, we would need to have our faculty participate in all the faculty sessions. But we might be willing to review an all college day. One breakout session could be a union meeting, but we'd have to discuss it a little bit more.
I guess the question then is, with that, do we want to try and address it? Or are we good with this language, with that understanding of working that out, the way you guys have articulated it? I'm fine either way. In other words, we can leave it, won't conflict with the understanding that the turtle is not a conflict, the turtle tour.
That was just an example.
But the workshops or whatever might be a conflict. We could try and address it specifically more here. My only concern with that is that all college day stuff that happens frequently, we could do that. But other things, maybe it's we don't want to, because what you're doing now may be different 5 years from now. It sounds like everybody's on the same page.
Yeah, and maybe the word meeting's not a good word, maybe it's informational session or something like that, rather than a meeting of the union.
And it might help to clarify what type of college or campus-wide event, so if we're having a campus-wide town hall meeting, the provost would expect our faculty to be there exclusively for that meeting.
right.
And we're having, a fall faculty meeting, if the division is having a departmental meeting, we wouldn't want our faculty to be there for the departmental meeting. But if the annual all-college day meeting, where there's a series of workshops that staff and faculty may choose to attend, there's even times where you're congregating with colleagues. I don't see any unreasonableness to that request.
And then we want to take a stab at modifying that, clarifying it for next time around.
Yes, we can modify that, we'll put some language, maybe some specificity, and then get back, and I think that will address your request.
Yeah, I think it could be just as simple as just adding another sentence saying on all college day.
Yes,
There's something parallel to the turtle tour or whatever.
well, we don't always have the turtle tour, but there are other things, you may want to meet during the kettle corn collaboration. That's a great opportunity, that union collaboration while munching on kettle corn.
That sounds good.
You want some kettle corn?
Yeah.
All right, are you gonna join us on all college day?
I was talking 2 weeks from now, on Friday. We're collaborating. May 9th. Okay. Don't sugar them up.
All right, so you'll,
4.1, you were good with the proposal?
yeah,
4.45.
4.1 is good. 4.5, we saw that appeared to just be our last proposal, which we're still fine with. On 3.5, so I mentioned, the possibility of resolving this through the academic freedom section. I don't know if you got a chance to look at that in your caucus, but I'm just kind of explaining where we're coming from. If you look at our original proposal, it's Article 14.2 or 3. Yeah, on page 47 of our initial proposal from February, there's academic freedom language that's, I don't want to say standard, but fairly boilerplate amongst colleges that United Faculty of Florida is the bargaining agent for. There's a paragraph C that speaks to, faculty members, essentially their rights and responsibilities in expressing their views, speaking, writing, however, as a citizen. And the last sentence says, a faculty member speaking or writing as a citizen shall be free from institutional censorship or discipline. So if you're good with more or less what we've proposed on academic freedom, I think we can live with just political affiliation and the non-discrimination part. Because that's really what we're after. We don't want people to be worried about being subject to, censorship or discipline because, they went to a protest that may have this, that may represent distasteful political views to one or several of their supervisors. So that's really the objective. So if you guys are comfortable with the thrust of that paragraph C, I think we can drop the statements and activities. But that's, if that's something you need to take a little more time to think about, that's obviously understandable, but I think that's kind of what our thinking on this right now.
Yeah, we reviewed it during the caucus. We do want to come back to the next session on the issue of the academic freedom and tie it with 3.5. Our initial reaction to the academic freedom language you have here was, we didn't see anything that jumped out at us that was a big problem, but we wanted to consider it over the next 2 weeks and come back to you with it may not be an issue.
Okay. On 3.7, your proposal for swift relief in the event of unlawful strike-related activity, we're fine with that. If you've got a couple of clean copies, we'll TA that when we wrap up here. On 9.3, we just had, we had a couple of edits. We had a quick conversation, where I kind of described this, but, our feeling is really, we understand and appreciate the movement that's been made. We think one helpful piece in just sort of, sort of compelling this to be honored is to, in that event, we've heard about board rule changes, statutory changes, things like that might result in this. Maybe there's other circumstances, maybe not, but, so what we're proposing is basically whenever this happens because of circumstances outside of the employer's control, that then, those circumstances be described when this notification is being given to the faculty about how it's going to change and when it's going to need to be changed. So in writing, it would just read, in the unlikely event that the employer, comma, due to circumstances outside its control, comma, is unable to finalize a syllabus at least 2 weeks prior to the term, the employer will notify the faculty involved as soon as it becomes apparent that the syllabus will not be timely completed, comma, describe the circumstances leading to the delay, comma, provide an anticipated date, and so on and so on. As I mentioned earlier, the concern here, and it's not a concern directed at anyone in particular, but it's just sort of the abstract concern that, we just want to make sure that this is something that remains a priority for the current and future administrations. So we feel as long as the administration understands that it's going to have an obligation to explain the purpose of the delay, that will be sufficient to ensure that it does not cause such a delay or have such a delay without, a good reason. So we feel that sort of, I don't know what to call it, I guess, embarrassment factor for not having a good reason, we think is going to be inducement enough to get what the faculty need for this. So that's our proposed edit to your counter here.
We did discuss the language that you just read for the record there. We are agreeable, tentatively agree to that language. I'll bring a clean copy next meeting so we can sign off on it.
Okay, great. So that's very good. I'm glad to hear that. That was, as you saw when you reviewed the tape, that was also an issue that generated quite a bit of passion and discussion. So it's encouraging to me that in one session, we've gone from the very heated discussion we had before to agreement on something. So that gives me some optimism that we can work through some of these more challenging issues, such as the department chair issue. We don't have a proposal in writing, but we have sort of a proposal in the collective bargaining sense and in sort of the colloquial sense. We're willing, so our previous proposal, our original proposal on the department chair issue was to raise the stipend to $8,000 and provide over the course of the academic year 6 credits of release time. We were willing to forego the proposed increase in the supplement and just have the 6 credits during the year of release time, provided that that release time can come from a face-to-face class requirement. Because it's, the face-to-face class requirements, there's just much more time constraints during the day, and that having relief from one of those requirements for that release time would be significantly more helpful. The chairs who are with us and the former chairs who are with us expressed to us during our caucus. Our next bargaining session is May 9th. We are intending to bring a proposed overhaul job description and duties, responsibilities for the department chair position that will address what we feel are those shortcomings. And, there seems to be quite a bit of common ground as to what the shortcomings are. So we will bring that on May 9th. But we're kind of telling you sort of from the compensation side now what we're thinking about, and we'll bring all that in writing. But that's kind of where our discussion landed for now on the department chair issue. We had the conversation. The time is more valuable to doing the job than the money is. So that's why we're willing to make that compromise there. So we'll kind of bring our vision for what that position should look like and what we think it needs to be in order to work properly. And then I think we'll just continue this discussion then.
Greg, to clarify, so then you're willing to accept the current stipend,
Yes,
which is the $5,000, with 1 3-credit hour course per term,
right, and,
face-to-face course.
right, and it'd be relief from a face-to-face.
From a face-to-face course. With also the stipulation that there may not be additional extra pay classes in the schedule for that faculty member.
Right, yeah, I think in our last proposal on this last time, we had accepted language that came from you, saying that, not permitted to teach overload courses. In rare circumstances, the dean may approve 1 overload course. And we're still willing to accept that.
I agree, multiple overload classes is unacceptable, you can't do it, but would be maybe 1 overload class, because we all do at least 1 anyway. Would that be something you would consider, just 1? Just 1, not 5, just 1.
You know, the philosophical challenge is if we're really, and we've seen this in the health programs with the release, those who are released, that if the premise again is that not having enough work, not having enough time to complete the work, that warrants, justifies 1 class release, but then I turn around as a faculty member and opt to take the course as an extra pay, then that negates the
Well,
philosophical underpinning of why we're
I
doing this.
think that you should have that option to deem that the faculty member, by taking that extra pay class under these conditions, if you deem that he's not doing this job because of it, then he has to forego that. That's just the way it is, okay? I think it's under the idea that you're capable of doing that and doing the job at the same time. I think that taking that extra pay class, that needs to be made very clear to the faculty that if you take this and you take an extra pay with it, if you're not doing your job because you can't get it, then that extra pay goes away. I think that's something along those lines. You have to be fair to the administration, I think, as well as the faculty. Okay? So I'd be willing to talk about stuff like that. I mean, what's fair is fair. What's right? You got to do your job. You're giving you release time. Do your job if you can, and don't teach extra.
Yeah, and in that proposal, I'm trying to find it, but having a little bit of trouble finding it, but there was language in there that yeah, it's just your section 1 in your proposal from March 22nd contained quite expansive power for a chair or program director to be released from the position, presumably if they're not adequately performing the duties, and that it can't even be grieved. We didn't include that in our proposal, not necessarily because we were dismissing the idea out of hand, which is not something we had a chance to fully consider. But as we, over the next couple of weeks, think more carefully and more closely about what that position should look like, this is probably something that will come up as part of the discussion. I don't think anyone wants, on either side, a department chair in place who's not doing the job. You know, it's not something that's a right. It's something that's, you know, it's a privilege to serve in a capacity like that. It's not something that anyone feels people are necessarily entitled to do. So that's something that I think we will be incorporating in some form or fashion into what we bring next time.
We talked a lot about accountability.
Beg your pardon?
Oh, I said we talked a lot about accountability and the necessity for accountability in that job. It's a really important job. They should be accountable and held accountable to do that job well. So I think we'll have accountability language as well, right? Does that
I'm
make
gonna
sense?
fight for this, they're gonna be accountable for what they do, because that's a problem. The job is not being done properly by some people, and they need to be accountable for it, absolutely.
We appreciate the fact that you concur and you see and you have witnessed the concerns that we brought to the forefront here as the foundation for our proposal. So as I mentioned in my last statement, you know, we are open to your recommendations to see how we can improve that. So we'll look forward to it.
perspective, and I've got signed off on the 3 that we have, and you can sign these, Graham. 4.1, 4.5, 3.7 here. I'll give those to you in a second. We've also kicked around both the discipline proposal you made today and also further discussion of the department chairs issue. We'll want to come back to you next session with a proposal on the discipline article. We understand your perspective. Same thing with department chair. I think maybe based on what you're discussing, we're still having internal conversations on our side, but that our position has changed. We'll bring back a proposal on that too. Academic freedom, as I mentioned, that's something that I think we can put on the agenda for next time around to pair it with 3.5. If we want to bite off any more issues for next time around, or if that's sufficient, it's not a lot of time.
I believe, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we gave the last proposal on the grievance procedure a few
Yeah.
sessions ago. I'm not sure if you're just hanging on to that or if you wanted to.
Yeah, no, I did mention that briefly when we were in caucus, that is still in our court, and I can look at that. I don't recall offhand where we left off with what the issues were, but it's something that we still have to address, and maybe we'll look at that. See if we can come back. Yeah, I don't want to sidetrack those
Right.
other issues.
Exactly.
Yeah, why don't we do that, and why don't we plan to continue to address the department chairs, the academic freedom, non-discrimination, discipline, and maybe grievance.
That sounds like plenty.
Yeah, 2 weeks' time.
Most of it's in your court, so.
Yeah, no, and appreciate it. Obviously, part of why it takes so long with initial contract is that while we're meeting here and we got a pretty good exchange of ideas, there's also a lot of work between meetings that has to go into it. With, not only my schedule, but everybody, I'm sure, same as your side, for a big team trying to get things finalized is always a challenge. So I think that's sufficient. If you want, let me give you these articles to sign off on.
Okay. These are the ones that
So you want me to put?
Do you have, did you write on the copies of either of these? Or one
That's
or
it.
five?
No.
Strike one. Use the 4.1.
Yeah.
Just be the words.
Yes.
Another like this dialogue.
Use deduction.
Yep. Yep, and we also, I've already got 1443.
You have those dates handy or?
Yeah, I've got them in my calendar on my phone.
We pull up mine and then make sure we're all the same.
All right, we're gonna talk about dates real quick.
Okay. What,
So May 9th, I've got us in East Campus. On May 23rd, got us back here. Those are both Thursdays. And then we had talked about kind of June, July, August dates over email. So all of the following dates would be, I think the understanding was West Campus in the boardroom, so it could be locally streamed or whatever. I've got June 4th, Tuesday, June 4th. Tuesday, July 9th. Tuesday, July 23rd. And Tuesday, August 6th. So I guess one question I have, and this is really a question for both teams, is there any other June date that we could get on the calendar? Because that's, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks between sessions. That's kind of a little while. Is there any other date in June that we might be able to make work?
I think the biggest concern is from the business side of HR and payroll. That's, that ramps up on our end, with trying to make sure we get everyone in the system. So I think, just speaking with Brian not being here, I'll have to speak for both sides and say, that comes like our difficult time of the year, basically between June and July, trying to make sure we can squeeze everything in before the beginning of the next academic year.
We also have the statewide meetings in June as well.
The Council of Academics.
Sorry.
Would it be possible to not necessarily have a meeting to do a whole lot of discussion and back and forth, but maybe just to get some proposals exchanged? That's, because in 5 weeks, you should be able to at least get a lot of stuff written. Hopefully, even if we can't all be here on a particular day, but I just hate to meet June 4th, have proposals ready the following week, but not be able to propose them for another 4 weeks. So even if it's as perfunctory as just exchanging paper, that might still be helpful in keeping the process moving.
I don't have an issue with even exchanging, we have written proposals, sending them in advance of the meeting. Gotta be careful not to have discussions, but whether we could do that in June or not, I think we probably won't necessarily know until June 4th meeting. But we probably could on some of those as we're working through for the July meeting, have a shoot for a couple weeks before the July meeting. Send written proposals that would give you guys more time to make more progress at the July meeting is what I'm thinking. Time to discuss it amongst yourselves, and if you had some vice versa, so that you make more progress at the meeting. Which is candidly always I try and shoot for. It's difficult with an initial contract, there's so many topics, but we could look at that as a possibility. I don't know that I would commit to it yet without knowing what will happen in the next couple of sessions.
Yeah, well, I think we're willing to do just about anything within the bounds of the law to keep momentum going as much as possible. What about the idea of meeting? I know we've kind of been traditionally meeting mostly in the morning. I think this might actually be our longest session to date. What about the idea of having an expectation that we meet for longer during the day, maybe take a longer caucus during lunch, print stuff out, exchange it, and just try and get more out of each day.
I'm not opposed to it. My view of it is a block off the day. So if we want to, upcoming sessions, I think it would be helpful maybe to have longer caucus. And you can see we tend to take longer anyway, even when we're shooting for shorter ones. If we want to have a couple of hours built in or an hour, grab lunch and work through it. Have a little bit more productivity in the afternoon session as opposed to just figuring out what we're going to bring back next time. I'm not opposed to that. I think on the days we have, I block off the remaining days. Is that what you guys tend to do?
Yes.
So we can start doing that even as soon as May 9th, is what I'm hearing.
We could, yeah. I mean, I'm open the whole day. I mean, you guys are, to me, I wouldn't arbitrarily agree we're gonna go to a 5 because we don't have anything to discuss, and we don't, but I don't see any reason why we can't go with the expectation. I think when we are at the meeting, let's take longer to caucus maybe so we can just put pen to paper and the things we would be doing every 2 weeks, we can do right then and there.
Okay, well, let's all come prepared to do just that then, if we're all blocking off the full day, because I am also. Is there any reason on our side that afternoons would be a problem? Okay, all right, well, let's start doing that then, and then maybe that'll meet the need, and we'll be able to make significant progress over the summer.
All right, we'll meet almost 2 weeks.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm